What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we are starting the reassembly of the 5.3, the replacement motor for the Suburban that we've got. Guys, I want to get this thing together before we actually get that out. I don't know exactly how I'm going to pull that out if I can't get the motor to get loose. And when I say loose, I mean I've got to get that broken rod either out, or I'm going to have to pull the transmission and converter apart, that screws stuff up. I don't want to do that. But either way, before we do that, we got to get this thing assembled. So I'm picking up right where I left off in the last video on this thing, guys. We took the engine down in the first video, right? We took all the parts off of it, all the stuff that you see around the 55 here, spread out on the ground. We took all that stuff off. In the next video, we cleaned everything up, right? So we cleaned all the bolt holes. We cleaned the pistons, the top of the pistons. We cleaned a little bit on the block, but honestly, guys, this isn't a show car. You could spend a little more time cleaning on the block. This has been in some red clay at some point, and that is incredibly hard to get off. But in this video, guys, we're gonna start, like I said, the reassembly process. I've got all the parts either here or en route. It will all be in this video, I believe. So we're gonna start on the back because we really want it on the engine stand. Well, guys, we can't put a rear main on with it in the engine, or on the engine stand, right? Because it's in the way. And this block, we don't have the ability to like mount it backwards to do this. So we're gonna have to have either my son come out here and try to balance some of this, or I'm gonna just have to wing it. But one of the cool things I got now, guys, is I got a new tool it's for aligning the rear main. Now, a lot of people buy a loaded rear main. And when I say loaded rear main, it comes with not only the gasket, but it comes with a new metal cover here, and the seal is already in it. I am not gonna go that route. I have before, but this route, I'm going to knock the new one in. Okay, so you can see our new one here, and it has the alignment piece in it. Do not push that out. I'm gonna show you the process of doing that. Now, before we do that, this guy is to represent an oil pan, right? So we're gonna bolt to the bottom like this. And then we have this guy that centers this once we get that in place. Now, when we do that, this acts as the oil pan to line up the bottom, and this acts as a centering guide, and you'll see how much movement we have. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my bolts, I'm gonna get those, I'm gonna get the new gasket, and we're gonna set this loosely in place. This does come with screws, by the way, to put into place. We're gonna get this all lined up, and we'll cut back in and show you what's going on. Remember how I said I was kind of excited about this tool? There's no holes to line this up. None. The rear cover bolts line up, but look, there's nothing to grab. The closest bolt hole is this one. So I have nothing to thread into. I guess I could, yeah, see, that won't work either. How dumb. Okay, well, look, I hope the other alignment piece works. So at this point, what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to align it. I'll just have to put that up against it when we get it into place, but I'm still gonna go ahead and grab the cover, the bolts, and the gasket and set it on there. As far as the gasket, I'm using a GM gasket. I'll list it in the description down below. It only lines up one way, guys. You can't put it on backwards. Nothing makes sense if you do it like that. And I like to use my bolts threaded up from the bottom to kind of help line this up. So what'll happen is they'll kind of start to thread into the rubber of the gasket. And so we're gonna go through and line all those up, get them started, and then we'll set it up in place with that new tool that's gonna help center this. So before we do anything, right, we just got it in there. Look how much movement this thing has, up and down and back and forth. It's got a lot. So here's what we need to do. We need to grab this tool, and we're gonna put it on here to line this up. I'm hoping we can get it out of there. All right, so once we've got that portion lined up, you still have movement, see? And now our movement is based on the oil pan. So what I'm planning on doing here is we're gonna get it lined up with the oil pan here, making sure that we're square. And we are, I'm using the same tool don't know if you guys can see that far down here, but I'm using that same tool to use as an alignment for this. And that looks pretty square right there. So now we know we're square on the bottom, we're square in the middle. We can go ahead and snug this thing down. So what I'm gonna do, making sure that we're square. Looked like it moved a little. All right, it'd really be nice if that would stay on there, but we're gonna start up here, snug that one down, go down the corner, snug it down, here, here. We're gonna kind of alternate. Make sure it's still square, and it is. All right. Now what we need to do is go ahead and torque these down. And I think they go to 18. I'm gonna double check that. I was able to get it out of there. Like I said, I'm alternating. 18 foot-pounds is all it takes. Now we have it torqued down to 18. We need to grab our new seal. And guys, there is a certain way this goes in. There's instructions. If you buy a GM one, it tells you which way it goes in. So you can see here, the instructions are saying, hey, look, it goes with this facing out, right? So notice the installation direction of the oil seal, the new design. Seal is a reverse lip style as opposed to what was used in the past. This side out has been marked on the seal and shown in the graphic. So it actually says this side out. So this is the side that goes in. This is the side that goes out. I'm trying to see where it says it. Holy cow, if it says it, it's really, really small. Maybe it says it right here. Yeah, this side out. It does say it, but man, it's in like really, really small writing. There's nothing on this guy itself. It's written on this like outer ring where it says this side out. So we need to press this in. So how are we gonna do that, right? For one, this kind of lines things up. Golly, that does not look square to me. Looks a little off to me, to be honest with you. That is a close fit. Yeah, it's square with this is square as it can be. So maybe it's just an optical illusion, but we'll get this back out of here and we'll press this in. The other side of this is used for pressing this. You see it's just a hair bigger. That's what it's for. You turn this over and we're gonna use a rubber mallet to hammer that guy home. So once I get it kind of lined up with the side out that says it's the side out, we've got it written right here, this side out. I need a rubber mallet, which I had, and we're gonna knock this guy into place with the rubber mallet. Line it up. I'm gonna try to go as square as possible. Let's see, we got, I think we've got it in there. A little bit more on the bottom here. Make sure we got a nice flush fit, and it looks like we do. And the gaps look pretty good, guys. I don't see it getting any better than that. I'm just gonna go around it one more time to make sure. And we are set. So we got the new rear main, new seal, everything torqued down. So I'm just inspecting this with my light to make sure it's nice and flush, and it is. Guys, look, okay, so what do I think of the tool? Well, the tool's, obviously, it sucks down here, although it did help to line stuff up. I didn't have to grab the oil pan, but I don't love the fact that we had to like kind of pry it out. I mean, it's tough to get out of there, and I don't really want to put any grease on it because this is not a seal that you use grease on. So you can see I did bang the end of it up a little bit by tapping on it and trying to get an area where I could pry. But as far as for installing the seal, it looks like it did a relatively good job. So, I mean, look, they're cheap. I'll list it in the description. I got it off Amazon. Maybe it gets better as you use it. You know, maybe it wears some. But like I said, I just wanted to inspect and make sure that I got it seated all the way, and I do. So now we can move on. I'm going to go ahead and put the flywheel on this thing. Now, as far as the flywheel going on, it does have an alignment spot. You'll notice that 7th hole there. So we need to get these started, but if you're wondering like which way faces out, it generally says on here this side out or this side motor in. But if not, guys, a telltale sign if you're reusing the old one is, look, you can see where the head bolted down and the other side is completely worn. So you'll know for sure that this is the correct way it goes in. And like I said, make sure you line this up. We're gonna go ahead and get this in place. I'm gonna have to grab my flywheel locking tool in order to torque these. And it's probably not a bad idea to put a little Loctite on these, which I'm just getting it started. I'm gonna put Loctite on these as I go together, and then we'll talk about the torque specs. I did take these over to my wheel on my grinder, my little, I guess it's a brush, and I brushed off all the old stuff. So now I'm putting a little blue Loctite on them. And look, they go to 15 first. So that's where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna go ahead and go to 15 foot-pounds. And I think I can do that without having the flywheel tool on. And then once we get to that, then I'll have to put it on because it's gonna definitely wanna spin. I don't even know that I can do it on with the engine kind of hanging like this. I may have to get it mounted to the stand and see if I can like turn it over and do it. Another thing you may notice is I'm going to alternate. So top, bottom, left, right, get that to 15. Oh, there's not much head on these, so you can see it's already turning over. Even at just 15. After you do the 15, I've got Cohen holding the motor. I've got the flywheel locking tool in place. We're gonna go 37 alternating and then 74. So it's gonna take a lot. I'm having him hold the motor because it's gonna wanna swing. Got torque down, everything's in place. I'm gonna go ahead and take this, I mean, we can take, actually I'll take that off camera. Those are 17 millimeters on my flywheel locking tool, but at this point I can go ahead and put it back on the stand and we can continue. Now that we're on the stand, we got to, I'm gonna pull this out. I did this so we could, you know, kind of see or keep junk out of this, you know, while it was setting. But we've got a new timing chain. And to go with the new timing chain, we also have a new oil pump, guys. Look, I don't have the cam here yet. What I can do, however, is put the chain on and just kind of, you know, wrap it around here for now. But the oil pump I chose to go with is an aftermarket pump, okay? So we've got a Melling 10296, which I'll list in the description down below. Now here's what is interesting about this. Of course, it's a direct plug and play, but it also comes with a couple different things. It's saying that if you want to change the pressure relief spring, it comes with an extra. I'm not going to do that. Attention, due to the nature of anodizing. Okay, this causes you to die. More advertisement. Got some sick stickers talking about the relief O-ring. All right, so here we got a couple O-rings to go on here. Now, let's read what this says, because I believe, so we've got a black and a green. It says the oil pump uses 2 different O-rings depending on the design of the pickup tube that it installs to the pump. If the tube looks like either of these designs, figure 1, all right, and figure 1, so if it looks like either one of those, you're gonna use the red one. Or the or the OE ring was red, then use the Melling green. If the O-ring was blue, use the black. So there you go. We're using the green because the old one was red. I vividly remember it being red, and it's a big old fat guy that went on there. So we got that in place. I cleaned that off. Now what we need to do is, I'm gonna have to take this out of here. But we're gonna line this up, but then guys, we're gonna go back and torque this a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that later. But let me get the 24 millimeter to get this guy out. And then we'll see if we can get this lined up. And then we obviously gotta put our pickup tube line up in as well. Now that we got that out of the way, got the timing chain in here, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna see if we can get this sucker lined up. There we go. And we need to swing it over and get our pickup tube lined up. May have to loosen. It's not going all the way back in there. There we go. I'm gonna say I may have to loosen this up a little because our pickup tube acts like it doesn't want to go in. So I'm gonna loosen that on the pan. Give me a little more play. It just may be snug, but right now it's not getting up in the cavity it needs to go for us to get our 10 millimeter up in the bottom. But another thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosely fit our 10 millimeters, and we're not doing anything here yet. We're just getting these in to kind of keep things in place. And then, like I said, I'm gonna loosen up that pickup tube a little bit because it needs to move up some. Well guys, you can tell I normally put together 3rd gen motors. So what I told you is incorrect. And when I say incorrect, the reason why is we're gonna have to put the cam in first, so I'm gonna have to wait for it to get here because we have to put the timing chain tensioner in before the oil pump goes into place. I was sitting here looking at this like, oh man, there's no way I'll be able to tighten that up and get that into place. So we're gonna pull this back off, and then when I get the actual timing chain tensioner, it's supposed to be here the next day or 2, it's still gonna be in this video, but then we will attack putting this on. We're gonna go ahead and get our camshaft in place, our timing chain tensioner, everything buttoned up on the front. There is one other thing I'm waiting on, but we can continue our progress. But either way, guys, I got the cam, and I got the timing chain tensioner in. Let's look at what we've got here as far as cams go. Look, we're doing a DOD delete, so we needed a different cam. I didn't just want to use the off-the-shelf regular old DOD delete camshaft. It's not any bigger. I wanted to go with something a little bigger, but not so big that it was lopey or needed a converter or anything. So here's what we got. We got a 325 duration, and then a 552 lift, and this is on a 115 LSA, so lobe separation. It's not going to be lopey. It's not going to be crazy, but it is quite a bit bigger. Like the factory, I want to say, is in the 290 range on the lift or on the duration, and like in the 400s on the lift. Now, this will require a different set of valve springs, which I did have LS3 valve springs installed when I had these heads reworked. So that is enough to run this. I didn't want anything like crazy. I don't want dual valve springs. This is going to be a daily driver, but I also wanted to gain a little bit while we were doing this, if that makes sense. So we're gonna get the cam cleaned up. Guys, I generally like to go over it a couple times. They clean it before they ship it, but you're gonna need to clean it again. Sometimes there's little pieces of metal and whatnot on it, and then we're gonna get some assembly lube on it and get it slid into place. Now that we've got the cam cleaned off, we're gonna use some assembly lube here, and we're gonna be pretty generous with the amount that we use. So you're gonna see, I may have to go get another bottle actually, or order another one. We wanna get this good and coated. and we're going to start it. And I've got, guys, I've got a couple of the water pump bolts in the end of this, right? And the reason we do that is it gives you something to hold on to as we go. And I'm putting it on the lobes too. So we got it obviously on the cam, where the cam journals are, the cam bearings, but then I'm putting it on the lobes. This part's kind of messy. Just be careful that you don't nick up the cam bearings as you're going in. I'm just going to go ahead and do the rest of it here. I don't know if the camera's in line where you can see the end yet, but we've got, got these water pump bolts in, and like I said, that kind of just helps us get that last little bit. And there we go. So now once you get that accomplished, clean your hands off because they're going to be nasty, and we can go ahead and thread our bolts out that we had, and we can grab our cam plate that closes this out. Cam retainer plate, I'm going to grab it next. I am one more time going to go over this just to make sure that it's all clean. You remember I scraped it. Well, let's grab that cam retainer. And I ordered new bolts as well. Now remember, we're switching to a 3-bolt cam, but this would be the same part even if you weren't. But see the recessed piece? This is the new version. And if you buy them new from GM, they come with the Loctite already on them. I know some people reuse them. You can if you want, but guys, it's really common for these to strip and not want to come out. So we'll get all 4 of these in here, and then we will get it torqued down. So these guys go to 11 foot-pounds, and here's what I like to do. I like to run them down by hand with our T40. It's not a plus. I know I said plus in the first video. It's actually not. Some controversy about that. A T40 is just a little loose. That's why a lot of people strip these, but a T40 plus is too big. So I'm gonna get these ran down by hand, but then 11 foot-pounds is what these torque to. And you don't, if you're buying new bolts, like I said, you don't have to worry about putting thread locker on them. It comes with it. But here's what you don't want to do. If you over tighten it, you will snap this plate. So I like to cinch them down by hand so it can move and get in those countersunk holes. If you do it that way, then you don't have to worry about it snapping on you when you're torquing it. It kind of self-aligns, if that makes sense. If you snap this cam plate, guys, make sure you're looking for cracks in the corners, because if you snap it, you have to replace it. You won't have any oil pressure, or you may, but down the road you're going to have issues. And I torque these just like I do a wheel, so we're going to alternate here, 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 here. Let's get that accomplished. Like I said, not a lot. We'll go over them a couple times, but you don't want to snap it. An ARP does make a bolt for this, but I think theirs is the old hex head. And guys, you can no longer get the hex head plate. You're only going to be able to get the countersunk plate at this point. For the next part, you'll notice I have my bolt back in where the harmonic balancer goes. And guys, there is a little, you can't really see it, but there is a dot to line up our timing marks. This dot needs to point at the middle of this opening right here. We need to align our timing marks kind of as we're going together with this next piece. I'm gonna see if I can go ahead and put my timing chain tensioner on loosely setting here, because we obviously got a new one. So I'm gonna loosely fit this in place. Wow, that is gonna be a tight fit. Tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can do that. Because what I'm afraid is gonna happen, I don't know, we may be able to get it in afterwards. We may just test it here. I don't remember. Like I said, I'm used to assembling 3rd gen motors, I guess. It doesn't go on the outside of that. I'm not really sure why I was doing that, but. So we got that in. I'd really like to put some Loctite on that, but that's a factory one and it came with new bolts. I don't necessarily know that we have to. So you can see here, we've got our timing chain kind of in place where it needs to go, but we're gonna have to line up the cam bolts. This little centering dowel helps you line things up, but let me grab the cam gear and we'll talk about how we're gonna put that in next. Now, as far as the cam gear goes, guys, it only goes in one way, okay? And if you don't put it in the right way, you're gonna have issues, but at the same time, you have to have a special timing gear when we're doing a DOD delete. And I'll list this in the description down below. These guys right here, these timing marks, that is what the pickup on the front cover is picking up as this goes around, because obviously it's used to picking it up elsewhere, like in the back. Well, I guess actually on these motors, it's used to picking it up in the front, but our old one is a single bolt. We needed the 3 bolt. So in order to get this started, we're going to put it up into place, trying to line it up with that opening, right? That's gonna be a tough alignment of that chain. I think we may, no, we're not gonna be able to. I was gonna say we may. And this will have a timing mark on it as well at the very bottom, and that needs to get to the point. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and move it to the bottom because we're gonna have to align the chain, these 2 pieces. So this top sprocket that we had pointing up and this opening right here, this mark right here, they have to face each other and they have to be dead on. Now, I'm not gonna go into the degreeing of cam and all of that stuff. Guys, there's other videos out there that are better at that than me. I just line up dot to dot and I've never had any problems. So we're gonna see if we can get this chain started on here. I have a feeling I'm gonna have to take that off. It's gonna be a fight, I have a feeling, to get this started. We may have to rotate. Yeah, this needs to go over 1 tooth. So we'll try to get it. And this is a fight for a while. Generally what I have to do is you have to take these bolts out and kind of put the chain on as you're going on this. So you may have to take this on or off a couple times in order to make this happen and get this stuff lined up, because the tension on this thing is, it's good enough where if you don't have this loose, I just put these in to move it. And these are the stock bolts, by the way. We're gonna put Loctite on those, but if you don't have it apart to move it, there's no way you'll be able to have enough tension to move the chain, if that makes sense. So I've got these snug down. I don't have any Loctite on. I'm gonna pull them out one at a time and put Loctite on them. These guys are gonna go down to 26 foot-pounds. But I wanted to show you this timing mark. You see this cutaway right here? And you see this dot on the top. Those guys need to face each other. If they don't, you're gonna be out of time. And like I said, you can get into the degreeing of camshafts and whatnot, but I always install dot to dot, is what they call it. And so what I like to do is, put this down now. I like to have my 24mm in here, and this guy will go 180 degrees, right, until the bottom dot is lined up again. Okay, so now you can see it's a little off, but the bottom dot is lined up. This one's at the top, that's good. Then we come back around. I like to cycle this a couple times, making sure that when these things intersect, those dots are still lined up, and they are. So now we can go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and torque my camshaft, and I don't know what the torque specs are in these. I'm gonna grab those real quick as well, but I'm going to put some Loctite on these, guys. You do not want these backing out. Now I'm gonna back these out with the impact, one at a time. I don't want to take it completely off, right? And I didn't want to put the Loctite on before we were lined up because I didn't know how long it'd take me, but I'm really going to soak these down with some blue Loctite. You know, some people use red here, You don't necessarily have to. I've never had an issue with blue, but I do want Loctite on these. And these are factory bolts. I just cleaned them up. Now you're probably wondering, like, where'd you, well, I just have factory bolts laying around. ARP does make a bolt here if you want to do that option. I just don't necessarily think you need that in a daily driver. I don't know. Look, if you can buy ARP bolts, by all means buy them, but I just cleaned up some factory ones on my wire wheel. So let's get these torqued down to 26 foot-pounds, and you should be able to do this without having to chock the motor. Like it shouldn't spin at that low a torque setting. I probably overdo it, guys. All right, now I gotta find the cams or the torque specs on these. I may put a little Loctite on those as well. Went ahead and put a little Loctite on this, and we're gonna torque these down to 18 foot-pounds. It's not very much. Actually, I may have to put an extension on this or a shorter. I'm gonna get a shorter one. I just don't like rubbing against anything when I'm torquing stuff, even though you don't get a great torque spec with that. 18 foot-pounds, I got that. Once we get that, guys, we can pull this keeper out and we're snug. So on to the next part. I don't have the next piece in the front, so we're gonna move on to putting the heads on. But before we put the heads on, guys, we obviously gotta put lifters in. So we're gonna pull our towels out. And the lifter I chose to go with is a Melling, guys. It's a JB2079. Had a friend that's had really good luck with them. I didn't see the need in putting like an LS7 lifter in there. And honestly, guys, it's kind of a mixed bag what you get when you order those. But I have had these soaking for a little bit in oil. And so I'm going to pull these out, but I also got new GM lifter trays. Always a good idea. These things are plastic, so it's very easy to crack them. And so you want to make sure that you're getting them put in the right way. See, this is backwards. You would want them to go in this way. But before we do that, we're going to have to load the lifters in them. And guys, look, there's 1,000 people saying different things out there as far as which way does a lifter have to go in. If it has a hole in it, does it have to face a certain way? It does not. All that needs to happen is it needs to fit in the tray with the flat ends facing the flat ends. So it makes sense. It rolls against the cam this way. I don't know how else to describe it. You don't also have to have these sitting in oil. It's just something I've always done. But we're gonna get these loaded up in the tray, and then we're gonna put the tray in, and I am using the factory tray retainer. So there's obviously a bolt that holds this thing in, and this is gonna be messy, guys. There's no doubt about it. You can see I've got a couple extra towels here, but we are going to get that in there. It should kind of, may have to wiggle it back and forth a little bit. There we go. Oh, there we are. All right, now we need to put the bolt into place. Now here's another thing. I like to use a little thread locker on it as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some thread locker on my bolt, my factory bolt. And I thought I had my thread locker over here, just a little blue Loctite on it. And we're gonna get it started in place. Now, if you'll notice, these things kind of have a stop on them that recesses it in this little cavity. I don't know if you guys can see that little recess part. Make sure you're using the right bolts. So I'm gonna go ahead and do all the rest of these, and then I'll come back, we'll talk about torque specs. I'll torque them all at once. Once you get these in, 106 inch-pounds. That is not much. And there's some controversy on whether you need a Loctite on them. Guys, I put a little bit of blue on. 106, and we'll move on to the head now. Now, before putting the head on, we're gonna go over this entire area again, just making sure that we don't have any crazy stuff that's set on here. You know, it's been a couple days since I cleaned it. Got that oil that dripped down from the lifters. I don't want that in there. So I'll probably go over this a couple times off camera, guys. I just want to make sure that we've got a good, clean seating surface for that head to set on. It's very important. The other important thing is we need our head dowels. So these little guys fit in the corners, and I'll probably have to get my rubber mallets and knock them in, but we need to get those in each corner before we grab the head gasket and the head. Once we've cleaned it a couple times, got our head dowels in, we've got our head gasket. Now guys, I chose to go with a stock gasket. Has a front, and obviously it only goes one way. They're the same on both sides, but we need to get that lined up. And this is just the stock MLS head gasket. I didn't see, you know, we're never gonna have boost or anything on this. A lot of times you'll see me use LS9 head gaskets, but for this, guys, I didn't see the point. So these are a little cheaper. So I bought just the stock replacements. So now that we got that on there, let's grab the head. And I did do a little bit different as far as head bolts, which you'll see in a second, but I'm gonna grab one of the heads and put them on. One of the things you need to consider before you put the head on, which I'm gonna wipe the surface off, but see how this is plugged? There's a factory plug in the back. This needs to stay in the back. Otherwise, you're gonna have to drill it out and do the other. So make sure that the head that came off the same side goes back on the same side. Otherwise, you're gonna have to rethread this, knock that out, and take everything back apart. So be careful on that. Clean this off a couple times. Let's get it set on there. Lining up those dowels. And there we are. Like I said, make sure that your coolant crossover is in the right spot, the open one in the front. So for head bolts, guys, I did splurge a little bit and I went with ARP. And here's why. These are bolts, not studs. I went with these because, guys, a lot of times, look, lifters fail, and I didn't want to have to, if something happened down the road and I had to pull a head off for some reason. I wanted reusable bolts. And to be honest with you, I like ones that are torqued to setting as opposed to ones that are like torque to yield, like the stock GM bolts. So what it says to do here, of course I'll list these in the description, but it says, I don't know if you guys can tell, there's like a serrated, almost rough side, and then there's a smooth side. The serrated side is gonna go towards the head, and we're gonna put that guy on there like that. Now, another thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put a little bit of the assembly lube that comes with it. We're gonna put that on the washer. It says to put it on the head of the bolt, but honestly, guys, all it's saying is it doesn't want any friction. And this is a messy, messy job, that's for sure. You can tell it's hot out in my shop. This stuff's like water. But once we do that, we'll put that there. And then it also says to put a little bit on the threads. I don't get real crazy on the threads. I'm gonna have to get another towel. But then we need to drop these into place, and it really doesn't matter which one goes where, because on an LS, on the Gen 4 blocks, all the bolts are the same size. You know, on your older blocks, like your Gen 3 blocks, you're gonna have variances, like the corner ones at the top are shorter, but on these, they're all the same size. And this is where, like, cleaning out your bolt holes like we did in the prior video is really important. We wanna make sure that we have really good, I guess I'll put it on the head here. We wanna make sure that the threads are cleaned out and we're not having any issues. And the main reason you put assembly lube on the head here is for friction reasons, like I said, to keep making sure the torque setting is correct. Now this, like I said, guys, this is, you don't have to do this. It's not, these are relatively cheap. I think they're maybe $50 more than a set of stock GM bolts. To me, that's worth it. I'm gonna get all these in and then we'll talk about torque. This is gonna take me a little bit to get accomplished. Here's what we got. I went ahead and finished putting the rest of the bolts in, got them snug. I also did the same method on the top, the 5 little guys. Those are 10 millimeters. These are 13 on the head. All right, so this is your torque sequence. 1 in the middle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then followed by 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Hopefully you guys can see that. You can look this up online if not. And it comes with the packaging that I'll list below. 25 foot-pounds is the first go, starting in the middle here. And I think I may have to, well, maybe not. Okay. I thought I may have to. So there's 25 on that one. Then we're going to go directly below it. Get the 25 there. We'll go through this sequence. That's the first pass, okay? It's 25, then 50, then 80, and then 25 across the top. Now, usually, guys, what I do is I'll do 25 on these as I'm going. So I'll do 25, then the 50, and then I'll torque these to 25. I'll do the 80 and I'll torque them to 25 again, just to make sure. It doesn't say to do that in the instruction. That's just always the way that I've done it. So let's get these torqued down. We now have everything torqued down on this side. 25, 50, 80, 25, all complete. I'm gonna go ahead and knock the other one off, or out off camera, and then we'll continue. Now that we got both heads bolted down, both heads torqued, we're gonna move on to the push rods, guys, and I am actually going to be reusing the stockers. Nothing wrong with them. I'm using the ones that came out of this motor that we're doing the DOD delete on, the good motor. And yeah, I'm just cleaning them up, blowing through them, making sure that it's all clear. I'm gonna dip both sides in a little bit of oil, put them into place. Now that we got all the push rods in, we are going to reinstall our old rockers. No adjustments, no changes, no trunnion, stock rockers. I may end up putting some thread locker on these. I generally don't, guys, but I clean this up really good. You want to make sure that you keep them in the same spot. And when I mean that, like they wear like a pattern on the rocker stand. So try to keep them in the same order they came off. I mean, look, you don't have to, but I always do. To me, it makes sense. All right, we got those on. I'm gonna grab the other ones, clean them up real quick, and then we'll come back and I'll decide whether I'm gonna put any Loctite on those or just torque them down. So here's what I've decided I'm gonna do. I'm going to take each one of these out. I'm gonna take them over and clean them up. I'm gonna put just a little bit of blue Loctite on them. So look, guys, they're gross. I'm gonna wipe them down, clean them up really well, put some blue Loctite on it, put it back in. So this is gonna be a process. Probably gonna take me a little bit. I figured I'd take a couple off at a time and go over there on my grinder, and we'll just clean up each one of these. I'll take 4 at a time. We'll clean up each one. Look at the oil on them anyway. I need to clean them up. And then put some blue Loctite and put them back in place, and then we'll get torque specs here in just a little bit. To torque these, they go down to 22 foot-pounds. I did put just barely any Loctite on them. I'll call it barely. 22 foot-pounds, but here's what I like to do. I like to get them started, and if they start moving, I like to keep them as straight as possible on top, directly on top of the valve. Sometimes they like to move. The other thing you'll notice is I'm going to be turning the engine over to try to be tightening these when there's no load on them, if that makes sense. So in order to find out where that point is, you're gonna have to snug them up by hand. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna do that with a different wrench instead of my torque wrench. That way we can kind of know where we're at. You don't need much. I'll just use a little 1/4 inch. At this point, I've got them all torqued down, and you can see what I'm talking about. Making a mess down below because I don't have an oil pan. I don't know, I'm gonna go through and snug them down again. Seems like there's a little lash on that one. See that? May have to go to a different size push rod, guys. We are snug. That's making me a little bit nervous. Seems like the push rods are a little short. So I can still spin it pretty freely. Yeah. I think we're gonna have to go with a bigger push rod. Otherwise it's gonna be really noisy. So here's what ended up happening. I don't know whether these heads have been messed with before. My guy who redid them, all right, he's a local machine shop and he's done a lot of LS stuff. But guys, look, here's the issue. These stock push rods, there's still some lash. And so there's 7.4s, which is standard for an LS engine. There's a couple things that could be going on. The base circle of this cam could be a little smaller, or the heads had a little more taken off. Like I said, he thinks they've been worked on before. That's why he replaced the valves. But either way, I went to a 7.45 push rod, which I'll list down below. Guys, look, here's the method of how I'm using to snug them down. So I'm snugging them down just by hand, okay? This valve is supposed to be closed. Both valves are closed. I've cycled the engine. I'm not messing with these right now. I'm just dealing with this. So once I get them to snug, okay, where there's no lash, right? I can't reach in there and move. I can kind of spin the push rod a little bit. And these are a hardened push rod. So now that I've done that, we're gonna see if we can do this method where we count the turns. We've got half. Okay, so about half a turn, a little tighter than I'd like. Let's loosen them up a little and try this again. So we're gonna snug them down. Okay, that's snug, right? Where they don't have any lash. Now let's try this again. One, so it's about a half a turn. So I don't know. The other ones are definitely too loose. This gives me a little more, I don't want to move it around, right? I think they make a 7.425. They're kind of hard to get though. So we're just gonna have to go with this. And if we have issues, we may have to come back at a later time and address this. I sure hope not. Let's go to the other side and I'll show you, because I've got these torqued down, but look at the play. See that? And I can still spin the push rod. So they are definitely, well, this one's closed or opening, starting to open. But yeah, I just didn't feel comfortable with the stock push rod, especially doing this. See that? That's not gonna work for me. That's too much, and these are all torqued. Okay, so we obviously need a longer push rod. So I'm gonna put these in. They're from the same company that makes the Cam Motion. Guys, I like to blow through these, make sure there's no junk, and then I put a little bit of oil on each side. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera, and then we'll get these torqued down to 22. Like I said, I like to do that with the engine to where the valve is not open, so you can cycle it after you snug them down, and then you can go back and torque them as the valves are closed. At this point, we've got everything torqued down to 22 foot-pounds. Guys, I did use just a dab of blue Loctite. And like I said, I was cycling the engine to get the valves to where they were closed before I torqued it down. I cycled it a couple times. I just double checked my torque specs. Not sure what's going on with the 7.45 push rods. They seem to be, I redid that method to where I counted the turns and I got to like 1.5 turns. So that's exactly right. That's where we want to be. I don't know what was going on with when I was trying to show you on camera, but yeah, I think we're going to be good. So at this point, we need to grab our valve covers, and we are completely finished in here. And I think that'll be our next step, is either the valve covers. I'm still waiting on a couple parts. I'm waiting on the valve cover gaskets. I'm also waiting on something for the timing chain down here. So yeah, I think that'll be next. Now we're moving on to this oil pump install. And the reason I've been waiting, I started this earlier, but all right, so we get this lined up, right, with the pickup tube, which remember I loosened that up. We get these gears lined up on here. There's not really you don't have to have it a certain way just as long as the gears line up. But there are a few intricate things I'm gonna be doing, so you'll see here in a second, if I can get this thing lined up. Holy cow. Get this thing turned. There we go. All right, so we've obviously got to line up the pickup tube at the bottom, right? With the new, it says to use the green seal, or the green gasket. And then we need to loosely fit these guys in place. These are the oil pump bolts. But here's what I want to do. I want to cinch these down ultimately by hand, which we can go ahead and do. But the pickup tube bolt that comes in from the bottom, I've never used one of these before. And not the pickup tube bolt, but I'm going to use something that sandwiches this basically around and kind of keep some extra pressure on that. But before I do that, let's get this thing lined up here. We'll get it snug down, and when I say snug, we're gonna get it all the way up against the block. And I'm probably gonna tighten it up just a little bit, but then we'll loosen it back up and you'll see why here in a minute. So I wanted to show you, okay, so this is normally what you would see. You've got the pickup tube that uses the 10 millimeter, and you wanna make sure that you're not pinching that O-ring, okay? So this is how this works. We thread this in, we tighten it up, right? Everything's nice and snug. However, I'm going to be using this guy, and what this does is it reinforces the other side of that, and it's made by milling. See this guy here? And it comes with a bolt for the opposite side. It's actually threaded on both sides. And this, like I said, just keeps this thing in place. I've never used one of these. I've never had one of these come out, but I thought it was good insurance to thread this thing in. So that's what I'm gonna be doing. What we're gonna do, we're gonna torque this guy to 106 inch-pounds, the original one, and we're also, after we do that, gonna torque this one to 106 inch-pounds. So remember, we unhooked the pickup tube on the windage tray down below. That's a 13 millimeter, it gets torqued to 18 foot-pounds. So now what we're gonna do, before we actually torque the oil pump down itself, we need to kind of shim this. So what we're gonna do is take this apart. I know this sounds crazy, but this is the best way to do it. So we need to find the Torx that fits this and take this cover off. Now I'm using a T30 to do this. So we're gonna loosen these all up by hand, and then I'm gonna use my impact to run them all out and get this thing completely off. I don't like using an impact to start. I don't wanna strip them. So once they're loose, we'll grab the impact and get this thing off of here. And then we'll talk about how we're gonna shim it. Now we've got the pump face off, right? And I've got, these are 0.05. I guess it'd help if I had all the same size. Oh, sorry, 0.08, sorry, is what we are looking for. And that is, I've got two of these here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna slide this one up in the top, and I've taken it out of the assembly. Like, they come all together like this. I'll list these in the description down below. But we've got that top one in, and we're also gonna slide one down in the bottom, which may be a little harder. And what this allows us to do is center the gears in the pump housing. I may have to go actually down a size to the next size down, because that is relatively close tolerance. I think is what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to go the next size down. You can see that I've got them in there now. I've got 3 of them. I've actually got one across the top and one across the bottom, but once you do that, you'll see that this fits evenly, right? Easily around the rest of the pump. So we can go at any point here. Oh, I have two of them, that's great. And we can put it in between the pump and the housing so we can make sure that everything's squared up. And then we can torque. So see how it goes in easily there and here. If I can find the opening, there we go. So we're nice and square. So now the pump is centered in the housing, so we can go ahead, and you shouldn't have any play at this point. See that? Now we can torque these guys down. We can screw them down and torque them to their final torque spec. I'm gonna put a little bit of Loctite on these guys, and we're gonna torque them to 18. I'm gonna do it in a cross pattern, so top, bottom. And then we're gonna rotate it around once or twice, making sure that we can pull that outer ring out. You notice I've still got the shims in there. So once we get the shims out of place, after torquing this down, and we'll probably put a little bit of oil on the inside of this. I'll probably use some assembly lube, honestly, just a little bit in a couple spots. And then we need to put the cover back on and torque it to 106 inch-pounds. I've seen 108 some places, 106 some places. I'm gonna go with 106 and call that good. Obviously, make sure you pull your shims out before you put the plate back on the front. Hopefully that makes sense. And look, some people say you don't have to do this. Look, guys, I've done this in the past without doing this. So don't think you necessarily have to. It just seems like the pump, they say, lasts longer because it's truly centered. And I don't know, just makes sense to me. Now, like I said, I'm gonna put a little bit of assembly lube in here. You don't have to do this. You could just use oil. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but there's not like there's anything in here from the factory, and a lot of people just put these things in and have no problem. But we do need to pull these guys out. And so now you can see how this slides in and out freely. It's not binding up on any part. Like so, we are set. And now we can put the cover bolts back on. Guys, I recommend putting a little bit of Loctite on these too. And I'll probably run these in with the impact. And then, like I said, torque them to 106 inch-pounds. Don't get real crazy with your impact either. Just like that. Now you'll also notice I'm going in a crisscross pattern with the torquing. Just make sure you don't get it too tight. 106 inch-pounds. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get the timing cover in place. So what I'm gonna do here, and it kind of sucks because this whole seal comes as one piece. So you notice that we don't have the pickup for the displacement or the active fuel management here now. What we do have is a completely brand new front timing cover. This is from GM. It's the only part I'll order. It comes with the electronics and everything, comes with the gasket, comes with new bolts. And but here's the deal, like, how are we gonna line it up, right? We don't have the oil pan in place. Well, that's where part of the tool that I got comes in handy, because we do have that. The problem is I don't have the piece that fits in the center here to align that. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna loosely thread these into place, okay? And once we get these started, we're going to use that oil pan. It's basically an oil pan simulator. Now we could put the oil pan on right now, but I don't think I'm quite ready to do that. So check this out. See how much movement there is? So we want to make sure that we're lined up on the bottom, but we also want to make sure, because there's side-to-side movement, that we're lined up here, because otherwise you're going to have an oil leak, and we don't want that. Well, the downside is I don't have the tool. I have the tool to center this and then knock this seal in. I don't have the tool that fits here without the seal in place. I'm not going to knock the seal out because then I'll have to replace it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the old balancer as my alignment dowel for that. It's not the best method, but it's the only. I'm not going to buy another seal for this. So let me grab the pan simulator, which we tried to use on the back, but it's meant for the front. We'll get that into place, and then we will grab the the stock balancer and put it on. Hopefully you can see that on the bottom here, my pan simulator. And that is definitely made for the front because everything lines up. The oil pan, bolt holes line up nice and flat so we can get a flat surface without mounting the pan yet. And we'll run this up flush, and that'll give us a good starting point at least. I got the two tighten that go where the oil pan goes, but the ones in the front cover I don't have tightened. So what I'm gonna do at this point is we're gonna go ahead and put the balancer on. We're gonna snug it down. I've got a balancer installer that I'm gonna be using to push that or pull that thing on. So we'll grab it, get the balancer, push it into place, get these things lined up and torqued, run these down as well. So it's all kind of a process. So for the balancer, this guy here, put it up into place. And then this basically is a tool that you thread in and it pulls the balancer on. Now, are we gonna have to pull it back off? Yeah, but guys, I'd rather pull it on like this as opposed to using the old bolt and trying to push it on that way. This just makes a more uniform fitment. So we'll pull this thing into place real quick, and then we'll start to snug stuff down. Once we've got that in, we'll leave that in for now. We're gonna run these bolts up to keep the bottom of the pan snug. And now guys, we are good to go ahead and torque these down to the 18 foot-pounds. I'm gonna alternate back and forth. So we'll do a top one, and then a bottom one, back to the top, back to the bottom. And I'm going kind of easy because I want to make sure I get 18 on these. Torque these down to 18, and I'll probably, like I said, I'll probably pull the balancer back off camera. Now that we got that torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and put the oil pan on it. And you're probably wondering, like, why didn't you just put the oil pan on first and then line this up with it? Well, I wanted to try the new tool, honestly. So look, before we put the oil pan on, there's a couple things we need to make note of. First of all, make sure your gasket material is all cleaned off your old oil pan. Done that. We need to go ahead and wipe this area right here. You can see there's some oil right there. We're gonna wipe this entire mounting surface. And the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put a bead of silicone in each one of these spots where a front or rear cover meet the block. So we're gonna put one right here. We're gonna put one on the other side. We're gonna put one back here where the rear cover meets, and we're gonna put one on the other side, because if you don't, chances are it's gonna leak there. Now the gasket from the oil pan covers that area, but a lot of times it'll leak past that. So make sure that you put that bead of silicone. You guys have seen me do this numerous times on the Trans Am. I feel like I had the oil pan off, I don't know, 50 times. And so, yeah, this is no different. So I wanna show you guys what I got. See that bead of silicone right there between the front and rear cover? Same thing on the other side, same thing on the front. Hopefully you guys can see that. Now, we need to grab our oil pan with a brand new oil pan gasket, which we have, and get it in place. Now you can see, make sure your pan's clean. Got a brand new gasket here, you can see. And I also cleaned up all the bolts off camera, both the heads and the threads, and we've got them pushed through there. It's the easiest way to get it started. So I've got Cohen out here. He's gonna help me balance it because I don't want one side, like I don't want the front smushing up against and basically smearing that silicone that I put in those cracks around. So we want to come up nice and even from the bottom, and it helps to have two people. So you can see how much easier it is with two people. He was able to keep this nice and steady. See how it's nice and even all the way around, but we haven't cinched it up. Here's something that's important. We need to lay something flat against the back here, because what we don't want is the pan to be off from the block. And here's why. Guys, if you don't make sure, because this pan has some movement back and forth as well, if you're not even with the block, which I'm using that same tool, what's gonna happen is when you torque down your transmission, because you can see your transmission comes through here, you're going to crack the pan because it's gonna draw the pan back, or if it's not flush, it's gonna cause it to crack over time or wear this gasket out prematurely. So use a flat edge to go from the block here to the pan, and you want that to be nice and flush. It needs to come back just a hair. And then same thing on the other side, so basically where the starter goes in there. Now that we've got all these snugged up, we are gonna start in the middle, go side to side, and we're gonna torque them to 18 foot-pounds, okay? So we're gonna kind of work it the way we did the head, starting in the middle and working our way out. So starting in the middle, working our way out, back and forth. When you get to the back, so these are all 18s, the little short ones. The long ones that come into the very back of the pan, guys, those are only 106 inch-pounds. Do not take them to 18, you will snap them. Let's get these all torqued. Let's talk about blocking these off, right? So I got these, like I said, from, I think I said it earlier, from Lingenfelter. Here's the problem, guys. After buying these, I saw a video where a guy used a wheel bearing. I may have said that earlier. Here's what I did on these first two. I used this to tap it into place, okay? Kind of get it down into where it's almost flush. The problem was the first one I did, the middle fell. It fell all the way through this into the engine, and I had to fish it out. So you just want to get flush. You don't want to go too far. So right there, I'm completely flush. If you go too far, it will fall into the engine. You'll have to flip it over. The other problem I've had is the middle falling out. So hold this while you're getting your thing in place. And we will pop this thing off here. Release the old piece out of the center. And guys, it leaves some aluminum. I'm gonna vacuum that up. I do not want that falling into the motor. We still got this in here, but I just wanted to tell you about my issue. So if you use the center to tap it in place, the center will fall into the hole. You're gonna have to flip your motor upside down, pull it out. Same way if you tap it too far down in there. So just be careful. This is not something I would wanna do over the hood or under the hood. Definitely wanna do this before it goes in. And like I said, guys, I don't know that you necessarily even have to do it. It's just something I felt better about. I don't wanna have any oiling issues. Now we're moving on to valve cover gaskets. And now guys, look, normally I use GM valve cover gaskets, but they were not available in a timely manner. So I am going with a Felpro, which, look, I've never had any issues with them. This looks like the wrong side. But the Felpro comes with not only the gasket, which I did clean this up off camera, and Cam's down there cleaning the other one for me right as we speak. But here's the situation. We need to put these in, okay, and they go a certain way. You'll see those cutouts, and that other one was the exact same as this, but either way, we need to press this in all the way around, and you make sure that it seats good, okay? That's very important that we get it seated. But what I was gonna say is the Felpro kit comes with new rubber grommets for your bolts. And I've also cleaned up my bolts off camera with my bench grinder over there with the wire wheel on it. I wish I had a bigger wire wheel for doing like stuff like this, because man, it'd make it a lot easier. I cleaned out the channel that this sets in, and then I also cleaned out obviously the outside where the bolts go, and this is a fight that you'll have getting this in here. So I'm gonna get this all seated, and then we'll grab the bolts and get those. And I like to go around this a couple times, making sure that we're good. I think we're gonna be. So let me go grab the bolts, and we will grab the new grommets that go on them. We're gonna get these things on and this motor closed up. When I say the grommets, so these are the bolts that I cleaned up, and you can see they cleaned up really nicely. We need to push these over that washer on the end. I have to take my gloves off for this. There. All right, there we go. So that's what we want. So it's a nice new seal when we go to bolt these things down. All right, guys, this is a little bit tricky getting it started. I like to make sure the gaskets somewhat line up. You also want to look in here and make sure that your valve cover gaskets aren't like rolling over on you, which I did. And then we need to grab our torque wrench and an 8mm. You can see Cam back there cleaning. 106 inch-pounds is what these go to. So that's going to take some. Here's what I like to do. I like to start in the middle. I should have ran them down a little more by hand, I guess. But I like to start in the middle and work my way out. I mean, there's only 4, so it's not that big a deal. But 106 inch-pounds, we'll get these things snugged down. And guys, I think we are set. At this point, guys, I know this has been a really long video. We got a lot accomplished, I feel like. But this is where I'm going to call it quits. We are completely assembled. And I believe, guys, this is exactly how I'm going to put this motor in. And when I say that, obviously I'm going to need my plate on here, so I can't put my cover on. Honestly, I went ahead and put this on. I don't know if I think I'll have the clearance to do that, but yeah, we need to get the motor out of the Suburban, so that'll be what we do in the next video. But either way, hopefully you guys did enjoy watching this come together. It looks a lot better. I know a lot of people are probably wondering, I thought about painting it, guys, but it's going in a Suburban. And, I did clean it up some, but ultimately you're not going to see a majority of this once you get the water pump on and all of that. So yeah, I think this is where we're going to leave it. So if you guys did enjoy this video, this DOD delete video, because there's a lot involved, it's going to continue in the next video. We'll talk about, actually, I'll show you the cover here. This is the new cover. This has the block offs in it, so you have the ability to not have the DOD. So I'll list that in the parts as well as all the other stuff that I use, guys. So hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, like always, please smash that thumbs up button. Guys, if you're not subscribed, go down there, hit that subscribe button. Of course, like always, ring that bell notification that notifies you every single time we drop a new video. And stay tuned to see this thing go in that Suburban.